Hey everyone, it's Luke from the Dr. Luke Johnson channel. Um, from Northern India, we have our ever faithful co-host, Ostic, and the wonderful, delightful, lovely producer Jordan. Thank you for joining me, guys.
Thanks for doing this every week.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys are great sidekicks here. Okay. um, So, we are going to be talking about just one section from chapter 18 today. We're going to be talking about the soul as mannequin. And the reason why I did not do an entire chapter, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and perhaps I should just go ahead and get into it. I made sort of a major error by over trusting the Grok AI. I over time came to rely on it as my search engine and had assumed naively that a lot of the major hallucinatory bugs had been worked out with these LLMs. And to my mortification, or I was completely mortified, if that's the word that is most appropriate for this. I found out about a week ago that some, not all, but some of the quotes that I've been sharing in recent weeks had been pure hallucinations from Grok. So it's slowed down the pace a little bit here. I want to apologize for that. I have not attempted to put any sort of disinformation or misinformation out there, and I'm in the process of correcting everything that was incorrectly construed. I'm going to talk about some of those things today. The good news is that conceptually, I don't think we're really too far afield. And going forward, I'm correcting that reliance on the AI and returning to text, returning to the primary sources to make sure everything is backed up appropriately because I got really burned. I feel like such a boomer having done that. But conceptually, everything is, I think, still on track, although there are many distinctions to be introduced. And it's going to, between correcting the errors and introducing those fine distinctions, it's going to slow down for a little bit until we can pick back up the pace. But there's going to be a lot of exciting things we're going to talk about today that I otherwise wouldn't have picked up on had I not realized this error. So, pardon me for that. And we're really going to continue to talk about, in addition to the golden bough, the soul as mannequin today, but we're going to continue to talk about this Jack and the Beanstalk fairy tale narrative that seems to be interwoven into the Apollo missions. It just keeps giving. Jordan and I had a wonderful experience yesterday. I was looking up the moon trees that were involved in the Apollo missions. I got alerted to this by studying the Apollo Soyuz mission, and then I retroactively, in a retroactive fashion, I realized that they were also part of Apollo 14. And I was looking into the registry, and it happened that there was one actually planted near us in the bicentennial, and I made a little clip about that and how that potentially relates to Jack and the Beanstalk. And then we're going to go deeper into the rabbit hair lunar symbolism that we have addressed in previous episodes, and what goddesses it may be associated with. And it gets more complicated. I want to put a finer point on the rabbit as a trickster figure. So I think those are going to be there's many fine points to talk about here, but those are generally what we're going to be talking about today.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah. So, and if you're curious about the moon trees, if you can go to the YouTube channel, I uploaded a short on it, and Jordan put that together quite quickly. Asik, do you want to say anything before we get into it?
No, I'm really appreciative of you like going actually visit the place where this moon tree thing was done. I was very excited when I saw that video, and yeah, I'm
Yeah,
basically psyched.
yeah. I think it has a different energy. I think Jordan was saying to me this morning that people are kind of podcasted out, in the sense of, there might be some fatigue of just listening to talking heads on Zoom calls or whatever. And it was kind of cool to go to a place and talk about the symbolism of the moon tree, just out in your community. It really awakens one's awareness to these things, wherever you go. So I'm going to try to make it a habit to record little shorts like that. Actually, there's near where I live, uh, there is a woman who was responsible for funding the Bollingen series books that translated Carl Jung's works into English. And there was a marker that we found near us, and I'm going to talk a little bit. I think we're going to record something else and talk a little bit about that in the not too distant future. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me and they know like any other interesting depth psychology or symbolic things that um, might be near us, that'd be wonderful.
Luke, are we going to go to DC?
One day, one day,
There's so much
one
there.
day. I'm afraid of big cities.
I'm with you.
Traumatized.
But yes, I'd
Traumatized.
love to see too if there's any symbolism that's happening for you, Ostic, where you are. It could be big or small, personal or global, if that makes sense.
Yeah, send it in, man.
And our audience as well. It is different. We come here, we read the books, we come inside, indoors, and talk about these things. But the truth is, this stuff is happening all around us in a very physical sense.
True that. Yeah, so if you ever want to send something in, Ostic, let us know.
I had one synchronicity. I had
Oh
my
yeah, share it,
I had my
please.
fake birthday on 9/9, like on September 9th. And on that day,
What birthday?
it's a birthday that
What
I put
birthday?
on my birth certificate. There's people who change their birthdays, when they change schools
Oh,
sometimes. You don't do that there?
okay. No.
Sometimes people do that. I mean, if you it's something related to you cannot join this semester, you have to join next year. So people, like make the birthdays a bit late or a bit earlier to fit in
Yeah.
certain classes. So I had my fake birthday, and it sounds really good. 9/9, it's good. And on that day, there was basically a coup or a dissolution of a government in Nepal. That is a country that's a neighbor, and it's a Hindu country, and a lot of things went on that day. So, and the day after, like CK thing happened.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
yeah, major loosh harvest this week in America.
yeah. You also posted something about the life being
Yeah,
found on
yeah. I don't
Mars.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think you reacted to that. Yeah, NASA announced it that they found life on Mars, which is so fascinating to me because I remember in high school they announced that they had found life on Mars. So I'm like, why is this a headline now? I remember it kind of rattling me at the time, or giving me kind of an existential shake. And I remember like calling my pastor and being like, "Hey, can you like help me understand my place in the world if there's like life on Mars?" This happened during the Clinton administration. And I remember that rattling me to the core. I think I was like 15 years old or something like that. Anywho, um, yeah, I had some synchronicities too. I went and you'll see on one of these slides, much more minor. I had to get my car inspected, and I had like an hour to just like walk around town. I went to this thrift store, and I had just made a slide featuring Briar Rabbit, this story that Disney animated and was part of folklore, and I had made a slide about it for this presentation. And I went into this thrift store, and then they had the same exact image that I had just used for the slide on an LP, a record, just out in front. And I was like, "What are the odds of this?" I haven't thought about Briar Rabbit since I was like 9 years old. And then on the way out, I found a bust of Artemis and Diana. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And you
But
didn't bring that home?
it was $36, and I'm trying to be thrifty, I suppose. I might have to go back for it. I think I might have to go back for it. If I bought something every time it spoke to me as a synchronicity, I'd have $0. That's how often I have the synchronicities. So okay. Let's go to the first slide, if that's okay. So we'll talk about, a lot of what we're going to be talking about is the Jungian interpretation of these symbolic motifs that I opened with, but we do have a little bit of Frazer to go over, and I'm going to just read the following, and it's kind of contained here in the charts, and we'll talk about a little bit about it. So primitive kings face taboos to protect their divine life, vital for the tribe, as early man sees death as external theft. not natural, exemplified by spirits stealing souls in dreams or sorcerers snaring them with hooks. This raises questions: what is death? What causes it? How to prevent it? Primitive people believe a small animal or man inside drives life, with the soul's absence causing sleep or death, such as when demons abduct it during illness. They enforce taboos to keep the soul present or ensure its return, using life preservers like the Karen of Burma, tying children with string during funerals to block ghost theft until the corpse is out of sight. And here in this chart, I tried to index all the ones that Frazer talks about in this section. And I did have a little bit of a typo there that I fixed in the morning. There was the Malays and then in the Nias got squished together there in the middle. But in general, the Hurons pictured the soul as a tiny, complete human with limbs, while the Eskimos saw it as an ethereal duplicate of the body. The Nootkas believed the soul, shaped like a small man, sits in the head's crown, keeping health if upright, but causing sickness if tilted. Indian tribes of the lower Fraser River held man has four souls. The main one, a mannequin, the other, its shadows. That's going to be very important for the slide that we have after this in regards to what we talk about when we talk about Carl Jung's theories. The Malays envisioned the soul as a thumb sized, invisible man matching the body, flitting out during sleep or death, causing displacement when entering objects. The soul mirrors the body's form. Fat souls for fat people, thin for thin, long for tall, short for short. And this was believed by the Nias to be chosen before birth with a weight limit around 10 grams. Life length depends on soul length. Short souls mean early death for kids. Among the Nakelo tribe, a chief's soul is treated as a child at death, guided with fans to a river ferryman. Punjab tattoo believers think the soul carries body art to heaven, a perfect miniature replica. Sometimes, though, souls take animal shapes, as we'll explore in the next section. And just to close this slide out, and then I'll open it up to Jordan and Ostick, but I included an image here that I thought was poignant. It's this stained glass piece called "The Hanging of Judas," and it's not really attributed to one person. They think the region is the Alsatian or a southern German artist, and it's dated to 1520. But what I thought was so interesting about this, if you guys can zoom in on it, I don't know, do you see it there, Jordan? You've got it. Is you can see that as Judas is hanging from the tree, you can see that a demon or the devil is extracting what looks like to me to be a soul mannequin from Judas. And why that's particularly interesting is I think there must have been this common belief amongst artists or just the regular people that there were different sized souls in different individuals. And because Judas was this traitor, the ultimate traitor, his soul was especially small. That's why it looks like a little child that this demon is extracting. Now, that's my interpretation. I've not done a deep dive on what this stained glass actually means, but I think that's what we're looking at here. And I just thought that was particularly interesting. So I'll open it up and let you guys respond. Ostic, you got any thoughts on this stuff?
I mean, the painting that you mentioned, it looks like the child is not supposed to represent his, the way he lived his life, but his next life, because he's already been hung, and his next life it would be as a child, but he's denied that life because he's been eaten by the devil right there. So that is what I
Ooh,
interpreted. Like he is not allowed to continue that kind of cycle of rebirth. Like,
that's an interesting choice. I mean, it's long been emphasized doctrinally within Christian communities that reincarnation is not a thing, right? Like that this is a definitive chasm between the West and the East. Although, as Jordan knows in our Bible studies, there does seem to be some traces of, or some trace, I should say, of reincarnation in the Bible. Specifically, what I'm talking about is how Jesus said that John the Baptist was Elijah. And this gets into a whole conversation about if he was talking allegorically or literally. I mean, I'd be tempted to trust what he says there. But yeah, I think that's a possible interpretation that you point out, Ostick. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, it was so funny. I forget where the guy was from, but it was like a Western country, and he like came to these natives and was like, "Oh, well, we have two selves," getting into dualism. And then the natives
Mhm.
were like, "Yeah, us too, bro."
Yeah.
It was just pretty funny, how Fraser encapsulated that interaction. It just made me laugh. Like, some of these things are universal, even w it just makes me wonder, okay, what are things that I think I understand that I'm assuming other people don't? Um, that they probably do. They just have their own maybe language of explaining it. Yeah, this chapter is fascinating. I mean, getting into the mechanics of the soul. I have a whole
Yep.
book behind me that is mostly photographs of different traditions and how they view like the chakra systems, and in most of them it looks like these various etheric bodies. So exactly what has been described in a lot of these traditions of this, they don't necessarily call them souls, but these different aspects of the being that are non-physical kind of carrying the shape. I've also come to understand that the physical body kind of expresses qualities of the soul, but where that causality works and when we step into synchronistic existence in general, like we're stepping out of causality anyway. So a lot of these descriptions in the book were about, oh, well, the body causes the soul to be this shape, or the soul causes the body to be this shape. So I'm not like totally sold on what direction that causality chain works, but there does seem to be this connection, and perhaps this connection between what types of bodies, maybe even what types of DNA can be a host for certain types of souls with different qualities. And that's something I have thought a ton about before. It's not stuff I can substantiate. A lot of it is stuff that's come up in meditation for me, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
rings very true for me, and it was just funny. Like, it funny is maybe not the right
This op
word, but
this opens up a ton of metaphysical cans of worms because this gets in the idea of like how much of one's soul is attached to the body and like how do the soul and the body interact as far as like interactionism goes. You know, it's something that's always astounded me is whenever you read up on these stories of like transplants, like if someone will get like a heart transplant or a kidney transplant or something like that, the person will start to report that they have personality changes and
mhm.
they'll like talk to the deceased family member or even maybe perhaps the person that donated the organ to them, and they realize they're starting to take on some of the personality traits of the deceased or the donor. And it's like, what are we talking about? And of course, this gets in the whole ideas about how like the Egyptians thought your soul was in your heart rather than your brain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how much if we are to believe in an entity such as the soul, how much does it interpenetrate like our fingernails and our hands and our fingers, and even talking about like phantom limb syndrome and whatever is going on there. So I don't know if you intended to take it there, but it got me excited. I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I this topic is endlessly fascinating to me. Um, the human body, like the body temple is just it is the most crazy technology I've ever heard about, and
Mm.
I can only imagine, all of the machinations of it. I don't know the ins and outs of how it all works, but all of the things you just listed are just like crazy.
Well, no one does.
Right.
No one does. It's a still a raging debate in philosophy about reductionism and
Mhm.
dualism and behaviorism, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, even it doesn't stop with like human transplantation, right? Like you have, we have the possibility now to take like parts from pigs and put them in your maybe baboons or something like that. And do you start to have like a more than one soul in your body and it's a different species of soul? Like, what are we doing?
Yes. I mean, this makes me think, what are the spiritual consequences of merging with other things?
Mm,
And that can come through in a number of ways. You talked about like the transplants of pig organs. But
Mhm.
and some people's religions prohibit that, which is super fascinating too. So there does seem to be some humans who, on some level, disagree with that for some reason. But also, like, you opened this talking about, oh man, I kind of outsourced some of my discernment to this technology tool. And
Ugh.
anyone with open eyes can see we're really being shepherded through a
Oh, we lost
Can you hear me? What?
I lost you for about 30 seconds if you want to say that again.
Oh, okay. Um, anyone with open eyes, maybe not, but it seems very obvious to me we are being ushered through a transhumanist transformation for those who are willing to participate in it. And all this business we're talking about here it's just another reminder. What are the consequences of the things we merge the body temple with and what we don't do? I mean,
Yeah, I
the
mean, you talk about
vacations,
mRNA and yeah, I mean, it's
mRNA.
most obvious. Well, mRNA injections, like, we're just, I don't have it off the top of my head exactly how they're all supposed to work, but I mean, I think they're altering the DNA in some way. And given the conversations that we've had here about personality changes with transplants, and you could say that this is just primitive people and their silly beliefs. And I think what Frazer's done here is, in the abridged version, to make it more suitable to the public, he's not bringing up how this affects Christian doctrine, because his audience was coming from that
Mhm.
background in the late um, 19th century, early 20th century. But as I've already done here with this hanging of Judas stained glass, you can't help but wonder about how some of the similar beliefs, in air quotes, infect Christianity.
Mhm.
But that aside, us talking about the personality changes involved in transplantation, it goes back to your point. Like, what are we doing when we're modifying our bodies in these
Yes,
ways?
and looking at this image on the screen, what are the reincarnation consequences? How does it impact the soul's journey even beyond this one life stream? Really worries me. That's something I'm very preoccupied with personally.
Mm,
And then throughout all of this, another thing that came to mind for me was like it also doesn't sound like the soul is the whole tamale. Like it doesn't sound like the soul is the end all be all thing either. Like the soul has these different qualities that get chosen to create different circumstances for the being, which was interesting to me as well. It almost seems like there's another piece potentially that is like the deeper core essence.
do you want to elaborate?
I mean, I think that's probably as much as I can say in the
Okay, that's
language I
fine.
have.
Yo,
It doesn't sound like, when we talk about dualism, it's like, well, the soul is the spiritual body and the body is the physical body. It seems like there's something deeper or something like more inherent even to the energy that we are, the spirit that we are. I mean, spirits may be the right word. And the spirit, based off of what these traditions were saying, sounds to me like it's a different thing. Like the soul and the
right,
body are both tools in a way to help create this experience, but the spirit is another thing entirely.
right, right. And I think what would be helpful for that conversation is, um, I mean, I think Aristotle's De Anima
Mhm.
is an important text to think about something like that, and perhaps reimagining it within, we get a lot of this language about spirit and soul and et cetera from the Christian background. I mean, Ostic might be able to weigh in on it from a Hindu perspective, but um I think possibly looking some theologians like Aquinas on this particular issue
Sure.
might be helpful as well. I kind of interrupted Ostic, and then you and I took over the conversation. So Ostic, do you want to say anything else about this slide before we go on?
No, I really loved the conversation that you took, whatever direction that you took
Yeah.
it in. I had a few thoughts to add. One about, the phantom limb syndrome. I had been reading about this. I had been interested in this topic for quite a while since the pandemic. And there's a writer called um Merleau-Ponty, if you've heard about him. So he talks about it in
Mm-hmm.
his book called The Phenomenology of Perception. I think you guys would like really dig that because he's actually talking about the exact things that you're talking about. Because there are so many contradictions in how you can have a perception of something that's not there. You know. because yeah, that this is a good book and it speaks into a language. And there's a book that precurs it, because he's in the same tradition that I talked about in with Bergson. He's in the same tradition. Bergson, Heidegger, and Sartre, all these are they're all in the same similar traditions. They're actually stealing from Bergson basically. And Bergson stole from this one, civil servant in France. His name was Felix Servagen, and he wrote a book called On Habit, in which he talks about how habit is the basic building block of our human existence, like motion and habit, that we aim to embody a certain moment in time, and we want to repeat it. It talked about memory as some sort of not being contained in some sort of physical object like brain. Memory is something that is something different from our material reality that we access every time we act or we live. So there are these ideas. I think the audience and you guys as well would like appreciate if they'll talk about these things. I think you would be all
Yeah.
you're already aware of
Oh
this.
yeah, I mean, I love all this stuff. I studied Merleau-Ponty seriously when I was like a junior in college at the University of Richmond with Liddell McWhorter, and she was a fantastic teacher of continental philosophy. Um, I think I've done a little bit with Merleau-Ponty when I was doing my dissertation on Soren Kierkegaard, and I communicated this to you, Ostic, privately on Instagram. One of my favorite YouTube channels at that time was, I believe, is it Herbert Dreyfus, and he lectured extensively on Kierkegaard and Merleau-Ponty. So he's a great resource that I would steer people towards. Um, and I think I'll have to look into this, but I have a feeling like Dreyfus had something. He had it's a pretty important piece on computers and thinking, which might be relevant to all this and many of the other subjects that we've talked about.
There's a lot of snobbery that goes around in these circles of studying continental philosophers like Heidegger, because there would be, when I used to study this basically on YouTube, there would be comments under the channel. Yeah, this is it. Where they'll say that, oh, this is an American guy, he does not understand this. You have to read it. You have to know German to understand it. Then these German philosophers, they have started their own channel, and there's something. But I think there's a basic idea that it should be accessible to every person. I don't think these ideas have to be like deeply convoluted or complicated that you have to, I'm just, this is an aside.
Dreyfus is the man. I mean, I'm not some
He's very
expert on
accessible. Yeah.
Heidegger, but yeah, but I think Dreyfus was a very effective and clear communicator of all these different thinkers.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And a lot of other things, I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about, there's I don't know if you guys play video games. There's a video game that's called Spiritfarer. It's a good game. I think you would enjoy it if you play it. It's about, you are supposedly a person who escorts people, spirits to their uh, death, basically. But the spirits, you operate a boat, and you will have a lot of animals. Yeah, a lot of animals. They'll come there, and some would have a spirit of a deer. Yeah, that's good. Well, you're so quick. Okay.
Mhm. He's on the ball today.
Yeah. It's pretty good. You guys should play this. Actually, their personalities basically come and they embody that form. Like like if a guy was some sort of a playboy, he's like a very handsome lion who's always kind of, um putting hands in his mane and everything. If a woman was stern, so she's like very reserved, and it's a good game. And I also thought about, it's a very banal thing, but I thought about Orson Welles, like what is his
Mm.
soul basically, because he was such a handsome man and then he became so fat later on. I used to think about it, like what
did his
caused him to
did
become
his
so fat.
soul grow with his body?
Yeah, because I thought like Marlon Brando and everything. This guy, that guy as well. Like, they had this consumptive thing in them. Their soul it wanted things, and when it could not, because Marlon Brando, he was thwarted at the height of his career. Orson Welles, he was thwarted at the height of his career, and then they became these night eaters, and they grew fat, like fat. So there's something in there, because the soul thing, the soul, it wanted more when it could not get from like traditional means of success, going out. They become like shut-ins, and then they started eating. There's things to that, and their soul, that's the
There's
shape of their soul basically. like not being able to, you know, exert and apply
Yeah, I
themselves in
think
the
there's
world.
something profound going on. Yeah, I think there's something profound going on there, especially when, they had so much success so early in their life and had probably a lot of desires gratified. It's like, well, where do we go from here?
Yeah, things
Um,
could not top that. One more
yeah.
thing. Uh, there's a recurring theme of, fat characters being like cast in like Coen Brothers movies. In Coen Brothers movies, you will find a character who's fat, and that fat guy, he'd be very like, he- I think he's supposed to represent some sort of a consumer society, because a fat guy, he's all in with the program. He's very content with his place in life. There's a lot of symbolism, but I like to think of that like fat guy's soul, because in the film they kind of refer to, in if you see Miller's Crossing, it refers to him, the fat guy, being not able to think because the nerves cannot carry thoughts to his head. That they talk
Hmm.
about. I don't think I'm on topic right now, but there's things about that, like the
Okay.
physical appearance, it affects what they actually are inside. I think that's what I mean. So their physical
I
Yeah.
appearance
totally
of
agree with
these
that.
mannequins. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's also interesting. I think that's where we get the word mannequin from, like the word, like in shopping stores and stuff like that, and clothing stores and stuff like that. I think that's interesting.
Will we be talking
Um,
about the hooks next week, or is that this week?
next
Okay.
week's next week. I alluded to it, but I didn't get to it. So we got a bunch more slides to get through, guys.
One more point.
Yeah, go
I
for it.
wanted to ask, like, why is like incarnation like looked down upon in Christianity? Why is it not like a part of the system? I'm always curious about that. It's supposed to be a hard line or something.
Well, look, I think that it's at least within the Christian community. I mean, it's not discussed heavily within the Bible. When I say like it's there, you really have to scrutinize it, and it leads to one having to do some mental gymnastics to make sense of it. Um, Part of the push um, to perhaps look down on the concept of reincarnation comes from wanting to distinguish Christianity as a unique and special religion that is somehow separate from what is naturally occurring within lesser evolved civilizations. Whether that's right or wrong, we have this big conversation about it, but there seems to be this idea that when we talk about what's going on in Africa or India or the Native Americans, or that's one thing, but then when we start talking about Christianity, this is something from God directly superimposed upon this chaotic order in order to clean it up and restore it to its a utopic state that it was initially planned. So I think that the idea is to kind of create more distance between what may be sort of naturally occurring amongst all peoples everywhere and something that's distinctive. um, that might be one reason why we are inculcated with that idea. And it may not be as naturally occurring, say, in North America as it is in India.
I would
There are
guess
other reasons.
I would guess it makes people easier to control.
What, not having the idea of reincarnation or having it?
I guess you could spin it both ways, but
I think you could.
yeah.
I think you could. I think you could. I don't know. I don't know. My mind has had to open up to the idea of reincarnation because of troublesome passages like the one that I announced earlier from the Bible. And also, like, I'm profoundly Mandela affected. Like, I seem to be, if we want to get really out there in French, I seem to be from a timeline that, like, not everyone else is from. So I don't know if and I've experienced deja vu throughout my entire life. And then when that phenomenon got introduced in the mix, I'm like, I might just have done this before, and I'm on a loop as an old soul with a bunch of new ones. So I'm a little bit more open to it than I was, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
But
mean,
anyhow,
if it's actually true, it would be such a mind bender, to think like, oh,
which one? The
to
Mandela
realize
effect?
that. No, this effect,
The
to
Mandela
realize
effect
that.
or reincarnation?
No, to know, to like really believe that you have actually lived this, and you're actually going through all of this, knowing what will happen next. Things like that. I mean, it's a very powerful feeling to tap into, I guess.
Kind
Yep.
of freaky.
I mean, there's also, I mean, I think there's like divorce from Christianity. I mean, there's also like, there might be a sense of hopelessness with reincarnation as well, like that you're forever perpetuated in the cycle of samsara and there's like no getting out. You don't think that you're actually going to like ultimately break free from the prison that is reality. Whereas the Christian perspective is, okay, you got one life, get it right, and you get out of here. Of course, then if you get it wrong, there are deleterious consequences to it that are, scare a lot of people, like going to hell, etc.
Well,
I
I think at minimum, keeping us from knowing the true nature of what we're experiencing makes it a whole lot harder
Yeah.
to optimize our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I agree with Jordan with. I think reincarnation, like even not literally, but it's supposedly a helpful idea to analyze your current scenarios. Because if you're believing in reincarnation, you have to keep in touch with the history of what's happening. And if you're in touch with the history, then you can, access things and like notice these patterns that are re-emerging, supposedly. So I think
Yeah.
this concept, because Kubrick even talked about Jack being a reincarnation, things like that. He was very open to this idea because it actually helps us to analyze our reality better. Because people, they're all the same. Because I'll die, some of my grandson, he might be the same crazy person like me, reckless or anything. You know, people they they repeat themselves. I think because even myself, my grandmother said I was a reincarnation of my grandfather. She said like you were born on this day and your face is like that. So they talk about it in this term. But aside from this
It would explain
literalism,
some things.
yeah, it would explain. It would. I think it's a better model, in my opinion. I think Christianity is a good model to like live an ethical life in a way to always take the right decision, make the right call. This is you have to do. I think it's a
It
Christianity
adds
is
urgency.
yeah. It adds urgency. It's a very personal religion. I think because even if I was not aware of Christianity of any sort, it automatically emerges within myself. Like if I do something wrong, I have some guilt, and that is something that's very visceral and primal, and I can always access it whether or not I'm a Christian. So if I do something wrong, I kind of know that in my heart. That is why I kind of appreciate Christianity. I think they have tapped into a visceral urgency that you talked about to live an ethical life. But on a societal scale, like people who sometimes get away with murder, get away with things, or get away with wrong things, I think reincarnation, not a literal term, but like having that kind of idea, like even Jung's archetype, they're basically reincarnation. If you think like that, like people are reanimating things that from the past. So this is what I think. On a societal scale, that's a better model. On a personal scale, Christianity is a better model.
I'm open to it all. All right, we got to get going, guys. We got a bunch of slides here. Okay. So, what I wanted to talk about here is the first thing I wanted to bring up is um, I'm re-listening to Jung's Man and His Symbols, and it's clear that this particular section on the perils of the soul is influential on Jung in a variety of different ways, and in a couple different books, like Undiscovered Self. He keeps talking about bush souls, which we're going to be talking about at some point. Jordan, do you want to read this quote to us? And this is an actual quote. This is not a grok
Mm.
hallucination.
Sure. One moment. Among such people whose consciousness is at a different level of development from ours, the quote soul or psyche is not felt to be a unit. Many primitives assume that a man has a quote bush soul as well as his own, and that his bush soul is incarnate in a wild animal or in a tree, with what the distinguished French ethnologist Lucien Levy Bruhl called a quote mystical participation. He later retracted this term under pressure of adverse criticism, but I believe that his critics were wrong. It is a well known psychological fact that an individual may have such an unconscious identity with some other person or object.
All right. So I share that just to point out that Jung was influenced by Frazer, which has been a predominating theme of this entire project. But I wanted to raise the question about, and just to offer some awareness here, we talk about all these different types of conceptions of the soul amongst primitives and savages. And it seems like what Jung is saying here is that this is not that alien of an idea. But to apply it to depth psychology itself, when we talk about the collective unconscious, when we talk about the persona and the ego and the anima and the great mother and all these other things, it's almost like when I first came across the example from Fraser about the who was it? If you go back a slide, they had like 4 souls and like 3 were shades, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do we not apply this to modern psychology as well? It's like we are exploding with souls, if you start carving it up and all these different psychic dynamics that are affecting the personality. Now, granted, there's supposed unity, but the autonomy of these different parts exerts itself if we're being really honest. And I'm not saying I have anything super profound to say here, but it's like the more things change, they remain the same. Like how, as complicated and as advanced and as progressive as psychological studies are, in a way, they're still kind of rooted in these folk traditions that Fraser is pointing out. That's all. I just thought it was interesting.
Totally. Well, I was thinking reading the chapter like CPR. My current understanding is we've shifted the CPR technique to no longer include breathing back into somebody's mouth. Now it's mostly focused on just pumping the
Chest
heart.
compressions.
And I was like, well, where did that come from? And I'm sure there's a like rational had brain created a beautiful, amazing like reason for that. But how much of it is this like idea that these different bodies like exist, just kind of like permeating and coming out?
Yeah. I was reminded you latched onto that story about Young, telling the story about the missionary, who told some Aborigines or something like that they have there's like the soul and then the body and there's 2 of them, and they laugh and they go, oh yeah, we have it too. Like, imagine like Carl Jung going into one of these settings and be like, yeah, we have untold numbers of archetypal psychodynamic forces. We've got, and they're just like, look at him like he's crazy. Like, you've got 1 million people inside your head.
Yeah, the example was Fraser, but yeah, imagining Young doing that and yeah, like
Yeah.
the conversation that might prompt is kind of
Yeah.
hilarious.
It's just kind of funny.
It is. It is.
All right. Osik, do you want to weigh in?
I mean, I wanted to add something to what Jordan said that people have discontinued doing CPR in some way, but like even there are images later in the chapter where he talks about people should not sleep with their mouth open because their soul might escape them.
Right.
But we have this idiom basically, like it's so prevalent that we do not even think of it as an idiom anymore. That someone breathed his last, he took his last breath. So like this breath thing, it's very deeply connected to how we can indicate life force into someone. There are a lot of movies where people talk in horror movies, basically in Italian horror movies, if you're a fan of them, they're basically things like people like getting the soul stolen from their mouths or something, or things like that. But this is maybe TMI, but if you've seen someone actually die in front of your eyes, I've seen a pigeon die, and the pigeon actually died kind of like he was gasping for air, and suddenly he couldn't. So it act and his mouth was left open. So that left a profound impact on me back then. So I think there's some sort of relevance to how these beliefs came about. I mean, just that the breath thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. If without further ado, we can go to my insane little rabbit trails
Yes,
if you guys want.
please. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Okay. All right. We'll have more on the Golden Bough next week. Okay. So part of the grok hallucinations have at various times during our study, I have referred to the moon as the collective unconscious. I've referred to it as a symbol of the Great Mother, and I've even at times referred to it as a symbol of the anima. It's like, which is it? Okay, what is it? And it's going back and trying to correct this and get it nailed down was a little bit more difficult than I expected, um, given what I had originally thought and what Jung has to say about the moon as a symbol. And there's going to be more on that to come. But I think I found this really incredible resource. I have mentioned Eric Neumann's The Great Mother. You know, Neumann was one of Jung's most lauded disciples and students. I think he considered The Great Mother to be just a masterwork of genius. But I did find this article that Neumann did, and I think he might have done this before The Great Mother. I have to check, but it's called The Moon and Matriarchal Consciousness. And it really drills down on this idea of 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 the feminine quality of the moon as a symbol. Um, Jordan, would you mind reading this passage for us as well? It might be a little difficult to read given but
I can zoom it in. Hold on.
yeah, and this is available for everyone to consume. You can go to springpublications.com. It's amazing. Usually these things are behind a paywall. I don't know how this one slipped through, but it's called The Moon and Matriarchal Consciousness. And this, Jordan's just going to give everybody a flavor of it.
Sure. It is, of course, in the feminine that the nature and periodicity of the moon are particularly manifested, and therefore the masculine mind continues to identify the feminine with the moon. Not only is the feminine physically bound to the moon by the monthly change, though no longer dependent on the outer moon period, but the whole of feminine quote mentality is determined by the moon, and its form of spirituality is impressed upon it by the moon archetype as the epitome of matriarchal consciousness. The periodicity of the moon, with its nocturnal background, is the symbol of the spirit that waxes and wanes, conforming to the dark processes of the unconscious. Moon consciousness, as matriarchal consciousness might be called, is never divorced from the unconscious, for it is a spiritual phase of the unconscious itself. The ego of matriarchal consciousness possesses no free, independent activity of its own. It waits passively, attuned to the spirit impulse carried toward it by the unconscious.
All right. So that's just a little flavor of it. I got about 2/3 through this essay. It is dense. I mean, it requires its own um, careful analysis, which I'm not prepared to do today. But I just wanted to showcase the um, the writing of Neumann and what we've got in store for ourselves, and to back up the if Jung is endorsing Neumann, I think it's safe to say that this is kind of an extension of Jungian thinking.
Mhm.
So I wanted to put that on everybody's radar, and this is going to be something I'm going to continually go back to. I've got I ordered my copy of The Great Mother, which I had been putting off for a very long time, and I think it's like 700 pages, and I'll get through it at some point, but this is going to be huge for my project diagnosing the symbolism of the Apollo missions.
Yeah,
So,
Austin.
Uh,
we've got much more to talk about in terms of the symbolism of the moon and goddesses, and we'll get to that in a second.
Sure, but Austin, did you?
um,
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course.
I mean, the last line, it says that the ego of the matriarchal consciousness possesses no free, independent activity of its own. It waits passively, attuned to the spirit impulse carried towards it by the unconscious. I mean, sometimes I think about all these things, kind of like people scrutinize women too much. Sometimes I think that, like, because things about the changes are so very apparent, because the menstrual cycle and everything, but the changes in men, they're very subtle, and they're hard to detect, like what kind of changes men go through. I think the doctors have been kind of identifying a certain hormonal change, that the man's cycle is, it goes on from throughout the day. It's a cycle that goes on every day, and a woman's cycle, it goes on like in 14 days. So I think because men, they had a stiff upper lip, or like they were less likely to self-report these changes, or like less likely to investigate these changes. They slipped under the radar from these scrutinies. That's why I think I'm just pointing out something, some sort of a blind spot I kind of see everywhere.
Well, to be fair to Neumann, he and he did write pretty extensively on the great, on the feminine, right? But I mean, that's not to say that there's been no ink spilt on the psyche of men. I mean, there's a lot out there. I'm just directing our attention towards the matriarchal and the feminine aspect because I'm obsessed with the moon. But of course, as I've pointed out in previous, podcasts or whatever, like there's masculine elements when we talk about the sun, we talk about Apollo, we talk about the phallic nature of the rockets. Like the long and the short of it is realizing the hallucination errors that I had integrated into what we're doing. I've got like I was funny because I joke with Jordan. I was like, you know what, Jordan, I've almost figured out the mysteries of the universe. Maybe like in a year and a half, I can go back to making hit records. Nope. I'm realizing how much more work I have to do.
Yeah, it never
Sure.
stops. This is so fascinating. It is answering some questions for me I've been asking in meditation. And this is all so much weirder than I
Yeah.
ever could
It's
imagine. And something that stuck out in this, the same phrase, Ostic, that you plucked out. We're talking about the ego of the matriarchal consciousness. That to me does not sound like the highest octave, the highest expression, the most source connected, the most divine expression of femininity. We're talking about something completely different.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that the ego is not the totality of the self in Jungian
Exactly.
psychology. It's just one
Exactly.
component, like, and as we'll get into with these other symbolisms, like with the tree of life and the Ouroboros, we'll see that it's a perpetual process of bringing all these into integration. So if we can go maybe the next slide. Okay. All right. So this is the slide I used last week. And the first thing I have to do is I intimated there in passing that that perhaps Jung, Freud, and von Franz had talked about Alice in Wonderland because we've been talking so much about these rabbits that are associated with the moon and going down the rabbit hole. It seems to naturally lend itself to that particular fairy tale. As far as I know, Freud and von Franz did not talk about Alice in Wonderland. I did even yesterday listen to Man and His Symbols, and Jung does make a passing reference to Alice growing and shrinking, but it's not really a fine conceptual one. It's just kind of like to illustrate something else that he's talking about. Um, so if we're now many people have done Jungian and Freudian interpretations of Alice in Wonderland. I mean, it yields so much rich psychical material. I mean, just think about it in terms of like it seems to be this panoply of play in the collective unconscious of all these different archetypes, right? It's chaotic. Nothing really is making sense. It's kind of like a dream state. So you can see why it would be a rich field to mine for archetypes. And I believe I might even have an example of that, someone who has done that. But I just wanted to point that out. And I did make an allusion last time to this Penguin Symbols book. If anyone's listening, I this is one of the most profound and impactful books that I have in my library. You can see I spent a lot of time with it here with all the tags on it. And it provided this jumping off point, no pun intended, when talking about rabbit symbolism. And I'll here's a summation of some of the themes associated with lunar rabbits. So you have that lunar link to the moon, which can mean fertility, water, renewal. But then we have the hare and the rabbit, which is that this can be kind of seen as associated with the moon because frequently these animals sleep during the day and they play during the night. And oftentimes they are accomplices or brother lovers of moon goddesses. But then they're in other cultures, such as the Aztecs, they are these cultural heroes. One example is the Minibuk of the Algonquin, um, and uh, and others. Sometimes these rabbits can be associated with martyrs and messiahs, like hares die and the reborn like the moon. It's almost like a lamb analog in other cultures, kind of like Christ. Clearly, we've talked about this in regards to them being sexual and fertility signs. But also, there is sometimes ambivalence associated with them, that they're lucky and unlucky when we talk about like years of the rabbit. And this was an important distinction that really jumped out to me, is that there the symbolism of rabbits and hares are different. There might be some sort of puberty bridge that they cross there, and we're going to talk a little bit about more of that when we talk about the trickster cycle of Paul Rodin. And sometimes these companions of rabbits are also monkeys and foxes, and this particular entry associated it with the triple moon goddess Hecate, which we're going to talk a little bit about. So that's what was in the contents of that. And that got me thinking about Paul Rodin. So if we can get to slide 300, and I'll open it up for comments after that. So I mentioned that I am going over man and his symbols, and it the chapter that one of the chapters I've gone through here is the chapter that John L. Henderson did in Man and His Symbols, called Ancient Myths and Modern Man. And he does quote Paul Rodin here. Dr. Rodin noted four distinct cycles in the evolution of the hero myth. He named them the trickster cycle, the hare cycle, the red horn cycle, and the twin cycle. And examples of tricksters I have here is an image of one would be Brer Rabbit, but the hare means something else. And if you look down here at the footnote, concerning hare, Dr. Redin remarks, hare is the typical hero as we know him from all over the world, civilized and pre-literate, and from the most remote periods of world history. So I think last time we talked about rabbits and hares as if they were conflated in the same thing. The point I'm trying to make here is that when we look at the symbolism here, what a rabbit entails and what a hare entails potentially mean not radically different things, but they are transitional phases. Like one predates the other. The rabbit is more associated with raw, libidinal, fertility, et cetera, whereas the hare seems to be associated with a new formation of consciousness. Now, so far as we've looked at rabbits and hares associated with the lunar symbolism, it's almost exclusively been these rabbits. We talked about the bunny hopping on the moon, the bunny girl, Changi, and her bunny who's pounding the elixir of immortality from the Chinese space program and Chinese folklore, and then also the Playboy bunnies that got taken to the moon during the Apollo missions. So I think this was an important distinction to introduce you into it. I have this text. I'll have to go deeper into it, but I I this is one of those examples where the hallucination grouped these things together, and now I'm pulling them apart to get more significant distinctions. And this is the cover. If you see here, this is the Walt Disney Brer Rabbit. My father used to tell me this story when I was a little boy. It was my favorite thing. He would tell it to me before I went to sleep at night. He would just recite it from memory. And this was when I walked into the thrift store. It was also the record that was put at the front of the record bin. It was like an hour after I had made this slide.
That's
So
wonderful.
I'll pause there. Yeah, I'll pause there and let Osik and Jordan weigh in on the rabbit stuff I've talked about so far.
I mean, apart from this, the one thing that is constantly barging in on my memory is the movie Donnie Darko. There's a rabbit there,
Yep.
and this rabbit is supposed to, communicate between worlds. Is supposed to communicate between times. So that's a very apparent symbolism, but in a way, like, why would rabbits become associated with these archetypes, like a trickster archetype? I kind of started to, like, as you were talking, I was imagining something else. I was drifting off. I was thinking, like, how would you actually hunt a rabbit as a human being? Okay, because if you'll see in the rabbit, you'll see some sort of very fluttery animal who'd escape as soon as you try to get to it. So you'll not be able to reach or kill it. you'd you'll always fail. So in order to catch a rabbit, you have to outsmart it, or you have to, like, engineer a weapon to actually, transcend your stupidness to actually. So I think that in terms of the monolith, I think it's I'm speaking foolishly. Wait. Oh, so it's supposed to,
You're great, man.
supposed to create some sort of a transcendence from your current state of being, because earlier you're only hunting, pigs or other animals who won't attack you, who won't run too fast, like in the movie, there's the hunting tapirs in the tapirs in 2001. But like with rabbit, you have to up your game a bit. You have to think of traps, you have to think about the environment and everything. So it involves humans evolving past a certain, just hit whack-a-mole kind of ideology, and like make it more sophisticated. So I think that sort of thing, that it might have been the origin of these stories about rabbits. They're very slippery.
Right. So if I can add something to that, and I think these ponderings are great in anticipating something I'm going to be talking about, is one of the ways that rabbits got associated with the moon are through Artemis and Diana. So Artemis and Diana are associated with wild animals and the hunt. All right. So there's not like rabbits are sacred to Artemis and Diana, but they do kind of fall under the catch-all of wildlife that they're either after or protecting. And the way that if you look at a lot of these images of these huntress goddesses that are associated with the moon, they're also one of their it's I have to check for certain, but dogs are very much associated with them. Very fast dogs that can go after these rabbits and rout them out. So it's kind of like the dog becomes an extension of them. They have all different sorts of animals that are dear to them, but sometimes the gods will give them dogs that help them in the hunt. So it seems like the rabbit is simultaneously something that is valuable to them, but other images you'll find that they are posing with the prey, with a dead rabbit. And of course, you bring up, I think you mentioned something last time when we were talking about The Shining, you know, associating Danny with a rabbit, right? He's like, he's what's up, Doc, right? He's Doc. People call him Doc, which I think is an allusion to a trickster figure. Um, and it's particularly hard to catch, which foreshadows what's going to happen between Danny and his father. But also, he's associated with Apollo. Again, another lunar rabbit association by wearing the Apollo sweater. So we've got another association there. So it's not necessarily that one has to be like really brilliant necessarily in order to catch a rabbit. You might just have to employ another animal to do it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
the
it
folklore
speaks to a
or the
level of
mythology of it.
sophistication. You have to like befriend a dog. You have to like, tame it. It takes time to
Yeah.
like befriend a
Oh
wild
yeah, it
dog.
takes civilization. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I
I
think
Yeah.
oh, I just agree, Ostic. Like it still requires a leveling up in the way that you are thinking about the challenges. So the trickster, the rabbit being the trickster, it's no longer enough to just brute force. You then have to go through some type of inner alchemical process to advance and uncover a new way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not done with rabbits. I got a little bit more, so maybe it'll shed some light on that. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the triple goddess Hecate, which I have shied away from because really I didn't know a lot about her. But we get some information um, from Jung. I've got some information here from his dream analysis seminar and another exchange with Henderson, who would go on to write that chapter in Man and His Symbols. And you see Hecate here in the triple form, and there is so much to be said about Hecate and who the other aspects of her represent. I will probably be dwelling on this for some time. But from lecture 7 from November 20th, 1929, we catch this exchange with Henderson and Young. So Henderson says she had two functions. She was the goddess of birth and fertility, but she was predominantly a witch, a goddess of black magic. Her cults were underground and linked up with Ishtar and Aphrodite, with infant sacrifices and sacred prostitution. Young says, So the Artemis side of the moon goddess was bright and positive, and the dark side hushed up on the dark, uncanny. Hecate side was expressed, and the good side hushed up. So um, I think what the idea here is that like Hecate is the shadow aspect of Artemis, and because of the connections with Aphrodite, who is associated with the rabbit, that might be some of what's being invoked here symbolically. Is that Hecate is involved in all of this, and something I wanted to add to this conversation is I went a little bit deeper into the Chinese lunar exploration program, and they had their lander named Chang'e. I think they've had like 4 or 5 iterations of this. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, and we've talked about her story. But what was so fascinating about this is they have a little rover. They have this little rover called U2, and U2 was actually the name of Chang'e's rabbit. So there is on the moon now, there is a rabbit rover from the Chinese space program just going all around. And that's like there is a white rabbit. Like, I mean, if you step back, I know like regular science people would be like, "Oh, you're overthinking this or whatever," but there's literally a white rabbit on the moon right now. And Asik, I'll ask you because this sets up things I was going to talk about um, in the next few slides. Is there anything that jumps out to you about the Chinese lunar exploration program's logo?
It's a half Ouroboros. Is that
It's an
what you're calling it?
Ouroboros.
Yeah.
It's another. I mean, that's not what they say it is. They say that this is like the script for like a half moon, right? But it's it's. We looked at the NASA meatball logo, right, with the comet Ouroboros and the red forked chevron, and we've looked into the symbol of the Ouroboros, which I have to go deeper on. But it's like here we go again. Like this, the exact same symbolism is cropping up, whether it's in the American moon mission, now it's in the Chinese moon mission. And I'm not saying anyone conspired or got together and said, you know what we need to do? We got to make sure we get that Ouroboros in there somewhere. I'm not saying that. It is just coming through them. It is the collective unconscious or something working its way through people. And they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
More and more, I'm agreeing with
So,
your interpretation of how these things are playing out. There's something
well, I have to. I
something
I'm
deeper.
just I'm figure. I don't. Osik. I'm just trying to follow the trail. I'm trying to follow the rabbit trail, the evidence, and that's you know I- I'm figuring it out with you. I don't have a perspective. I don't have it all figured out. It's more. People ask me like, "Oh, I need you to teach me something." I'm. It's more of a mindset and an openness to seeing the symbols. But where this goes, like you guys are on the journey with me. I don't know where this goes ultimately. I don't know what the destination is. This is a research project for me.
It works
So
very well
yeah,
as a research project because you're kind of updating the collective unconscious that we take for granted. People don't have a clear idea about what's it about. So I think these symbols, they're popping up everywhere. I think it's a good work that you're doing. I wanted to
thanks,
say
man.
that.
I appreciate it. But there are so many different stories, and I need to pin this down harder because it's not obvious. Like it's not like one to one, or you can just go to Wikipedia and you go, oh yeah, Diana's sacred animal is the rabbit, or Diana or Artemis's sacred animal is the rabbit, or Hecate's sacred animal is the rabbit. It it's more complicated than that. Like it's like there is a loose because they are associated with the moon and because rabbits are associated with the moon, like over time they got associated together, but they're not necessarily the animal that's super sacred to them. Like some deer are like probably more associated with Artemis or Diana than rabbits are. So it's complicated, and I'm kind of learning a lot of this mythology on the go. So what I'm saying here is kind of tentative. Now, on the next slide, I believe I can show how the rabbit got associated with Diana, and speculate how this 3 hairs symbol got associated with Hecate. So if we go there to slide 302, um, Osik, why don't you read the quote here in the Iron Age? Could you read that?
In the Iron Age, people worshipped Andra- Andraste. In the Roman period, a hybrid goddess, Diana Andraste. In medieval England, you you saw
That's Easter.
yeah Easter. Okay, Easter, and in medieval Wales, Saint Melangel. All were associated with the hair, but their origins are diverse. Experts trace links
Yeah,
between hair goddesses worshipped for thousands of years.
right. And this is from Exeter University in England. And what was so fascinating to me was I didn't know who Andraste was. And so I did a little bit of research. It's documented here in the Roman history by Cassius Dio. Jordan, would you mind reading that passage for us?
Sure, the one at the top.
Top right.
Okay. Let us, therefore, go against the Romans, trusting boldly to good fortune. Let us show them that they are hares and foxes, trying to rule over dogs and wolves. When she, Boudica, had finished speaking, she employed a species of denovation, letting a hair escape from the fold of her dress. And since it ran on what they considered the auspicious side, the whole multitude shouted with pleasure. And Boudica, raising her hands towards heaven, said, I thank you, Andraste, and call upon you as woman speaking to woman. I beg you for victory and preservation of liberty.
Right. So this is where the idea of hares and rabbits being associated with Boudica comes from. If you see in the bottom left-hand corner, I grabbed this off someone's Instagram. This is a modern interpretation of Boudica with the hare, with the rabbit. And who she was a queen of the ancient British Iceni tribe who led a failed uprising against the conquering forces of the Roman Empire in AD 60 or 61. And she has become a British national heroine, a symbol of the struggle for justice and independence. That comes from Wikipedia. So I just thought this was really interesting. It's complicated, right? So did Diana have this association with the rabbit prior to her hybridization with the goddess Andraste? I This seems to indicate that it goes in waves. So maybe the Greek Diana or the Greek Artemis, it wasn't that strongly associated. But as time went on, through the syncretization, the rabbit gets associated with Diana through this subjugation of this British tribe. So this is what I mean about it being way more complicated than just being like, oh, the Greeks thought this, the Romans thought this. There's like all these little transitional steps and all these like minor figures and like all these little stories about how something happened. And when that Boudica figure and Andraste gets assimilated, that's it. But it's not like people at the time like were thinking too much about it. It's like so many things in all of our respective cultures. We're like, how did that? If you stop and think about like all the weird stuff in our world, you go, where did that even come from? We've looked at that so many times, whether it's like beauty pageants or the rice at weddings or uncountable things. We could sit here and make lists of them all day long. Like, where did that even come from? Like, why we wear graduation robes and mortar boards, and like, where did we just accept that? And everybody just kind of goes about their life. And we're probably doing the same thing back then. And people are trying to put together the history and how this all happened. And who knows if this is right? I mean, this is one passage. Um, I'm trusting the experts on this one. Don't really do that too often, but on this one, I guess I kind of have to because I have not read deeply. But this seems to be where the idea of the rabbit being associated with Diana comes from. And I had known about this figure, the 3 hairs figure. It pops up all over the world. It's in China, it's in Christian communities, it's in Jewish communities, it's everywhere because it kind of forms this Trinitarian thing, and we could riff on the symbolism of it all. But I did just kind of doing some internet research. It seems like some of the more witchy sites that I came across, and Hecate, as I was showing Ostic earlier, Jordan, is kind of associated with the dark side of Artemis, and she's the goddess of crossroads and the underworld, et cetera, et cetera. Like a lot of witches claim this three-hair symbol as a symbol of Hecate because she is the triple goddess. You can see here's a more familiar depiction of her with her three faces. Is that the case? Or is this just like misinformation on the internet? I've got to go deeper. So there's not really a lot to verify here. It's a lead for someone to pursue. And I've got to go deeper into this Hecate figure, and I imagine it's in Neumann's Great Mother, but it's we haven't talked about this too much. We've just been talking about the moon as the Great Mother, but we haven't talked about its phases. We haven't talked about its colorings. We haven't talked about all these different things that moons do. And I have a feeling that the triple aspect of Hecate is going to relate to those phases of the moon symbolically, and we'll have to explore that in its relevance for the Apollo missions. But lastly, I mean, if Hecate is some sort of goddess of the crossroads in the underworld, it kind of makes sense that the rabbit would be associated with her, given that rabbits go underground to the underworld, down the rabbit hole. So I think that's where kind of why this rabbit symbolism gets associated with her. So yeah,
Uh,
Ostic.
that's a good thing, good theory. I wanted to ask you, I think in a many months ago, you mentioned in the podcast about Barry Lyndon, about him, something about him going to the underworld. Is it is it kind of related to this? Barry Lyndon
What did I say?
supposedly to be
I forget what I.
it's supposed to be an allegory of
Can,
some Greek person going to the underworld or something like that, Achilles or something like that. I'm not sure.
oh, I think I mentioned that the I don't know if I was making that strong of a claim, but I think what I was saying was the one of the residences that they shot it on had topography. They had like recreated ruins or something like that that mirrored some of the aspects of Aeneas's journey, perhaps into the underworld. Um, like that was on the estate. And it was kind of like one of those things like, did Kubrick choose that estate because it had that built into the scenery, or was that like one of these happy accidents that cracked him up, like when the Shining set burned down to mirror what happened in King's book that he excluded from his film, like that he's in this dialogue with the reality itself.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. If it's connected, this journey to the underworld is it connected to rabbits or something like that? Because there's
Yeah.
a magic show or something. And in the last
Yeah,
podcast,
we have the white rabbit. Yeah, we have the white rabbit at the magic show in Barry Lyndon.
there's also another thing about, I'm not sure if it might sound too stupid, but in with Bunny cartoons, like if you watch those Looney Tunes cartoons, what Bugs Bunny actually does, he changes his dress, he changes his appearances a lot because he's a master of disguise in some way. If you'll see watch those cartoons, he'll constantly change his, because not many characters have this kind of um power. Like Bugs Bunny has this power to like gender bend or like change his character or something like that in order to, one up his enemy. And in Barry Lyndon, you'll see so many times like Barry, he's changing he's carrying out disguises to further his own agenda. He's first of all stealing British officers' clothes and then going on and and then with the Chevalier, he's changing his appearance again. I thought that was amusing. I'm just back in the day, I was thinking about like these Looney Tunes connections with Kubrick movies because he talks about Looney Tunes cartoons and everything.
Well, that brings to mind. I had forgotten that Bugs Bunny was a Looney Tune, right? And Looney Tune is a way to say that someone is crazy, right? And what's grouped into loony is lunatic. And so both those words are connected to Luna or the moon, right? That something about the moon drives people crazy, right? You could argue that I've entered into some sort of psychosis seeing all these symbols everywhere. But that might also be part of the reason, when he says, "What's up, Doc?" That is that reinforces Danny's connection to the, not just that he's like a rabbit, but it's a Looney Tune and lunatic and Apollo. I think that seems right to me. That seems right to me. Not
Yeah,
to
that's
mention
good.
that
That's good.
you hear the loon call. You can, if there's, it's kind of subliminal, but you can hear these like loons, like like loons in The Shining. And if you listen very closely, if you listen very closely to the the moon landing, there's like some kind of bird sound in it briefly, like like I don't know what kind of bird it is, but there's a bird in it's like it all. They try to explain it as some sort of like digital artifact, but
Eh,
I
The
don't know.
latest,
I'll try to find it. I'll find it and send it to you guys, and you be the judge. It's not a loon. It's not a loon, but it's something else. It's like a like a it's something else.
have you seen that rat on the rocket? There was a footage of a rat that
Mm.
was crawling
Oh
around on
yeah,
the
one of
rocket.
one of Elon's. Yeah, I haven't even thought about when I knew about the rat on the rock Elon's rocket or whatever. Like it was just at the time, it was just kind of like, here we go again. Look at the rat, guys. But now that it's like I'm not even trying to address the those questions. I'm trying to address the symbolism. What does it mean that there's you know a rat on the rocket? What has the collective unconscious delivered to us?
Talked about Apollo
There's
being the
all
god of
sorts of.
pestilence.
Yeah, there we go. There is there, and see, there you go. There you go. There you go. And that you've because of what we've done before, you've picked up on it, right? We're continuing the dream of Apollo. Apollo's the mouse god. The rocket and the syringe similarity, with pestilence. Yeah, there we go. See, it just all kind of opens up with the symbolic. You got to get one of the symbol dictionaries. It kind of all opens up.
Can make a great oracle too, if you're into that.
Yeah. The word oracle has been on my mind a lot lately. I saw that like isn't Larry Ellison like the CEO of Oracle? He like eclipsed Elon Musk. Yeah, he is. He like eclipsed Elon Musk as like the richest man in the world this week or something like that. And he's the CEO of, or he was the CEO of Oracle. And I was thinking about the Oracle from the Matrix. I just been seeing Oracle everywhere I go. And you just brought it up. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Pay attention.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
such a weird thing that he became the richest person. Like, just by making a deal with Sam Altman, his stock flew up. It's such a weird thing to happen. Like, it's basically magic. Like, they're making money out of
Yeah.
nothing. Money, just insane.
I think
Like, it's
I find it interesting that one of the main guys in AI is named Sam Altman. I feel like it's so this whole compulsion of the name thing. Like I don't know anything about Sam Altman, but like I just know he does AI, and his name is Altman, and it's like AI. Like isn't that like the alternative to man or something? Like it's like in his name. It's like all the other stuff.
there's other thing. I think it's supposed to related to mountaintops, like Altman. Is it related to mountaintops? The name
I
Altman.
mean, mountains might have something to do with altitude, sure. I'll have to look it up. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I'll
that was
look
the
it
thing
up.
that struck me. I'm just riffing here. Let's see. I think we covered all this. So I think we can go to the next slide, Jordan.
You got it.
Yeah.
I won't interrupt further. One last point. If you want to look up all
Sure.
the similarities between like Looney Tunes cartoons, I kind of made a list of a few cartoons that were referenced in Kubrick movies. Like not in in the movie, but like watch the cartoon short and you'll watch the movie, you'll think about it's a funny game sort of thing, but it's like it's there. He likes to
They're
mention it.
there.
Yeah. With the
It's not
Bugs
just
Bunny
Looney
thing,
Tunes. There's a bunch of other cartoons like Snoopy and Woodstock. I mean, we've talked about Mickey Mouse. There's a bunch of different
yeah, he
cartoons and
talks
Kubrick
about Tom and
stuff.
Jerry as well. Like he talked about Tom
Yeah,
and Jerry with reference to A Clockwork Orange, that there's so much sadistic violence. Why are you laugh at that, but you're criticizing my film for it? Yeah, things like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This was a really fascinating discovery that I made in this process. When we've talked about the Virgin Mary, when I was like, it seems like the moon landing in some way is like acting out Revelation 12. I've not fully explored that, but we looked at all the lunar symbolism associated with Mary, right? And how the Virgin Mary is the Virgin Mary's apotheosis, and the talk about the woman with the 12 stars on her head, et cetera, right? Well, I found that in medieval art, um, it was quite common to associate the Virgin Mary with rabbits, with the white rabbit. And the reason for this was intriguing to me. Of course, it makes total sense and is probably completely unconnected. Well, maybe not completely unconnected, but it could have just been this psychological convergence from the other lunar deities being associated with rabbits. But it had everything to do with this belief. I've included this is Titian's The Madonna of the Rabbit, and yeah, it says the rabbit is a symbol of fertility and due to its whiteness of Mary's purity and the mystery of the incarnation, and is also a symbol of her virginity. Okay, yeah. Female rabbits and hares can conceive a second litter of offspring while still pregnant with the first, resulting in their being able to give birth seemingly without having been impregnated. So they had made this observation, and other individuals had noted that it was kind of a belief that rabbits in some way were hermaphroditic, that they could kind of like impregnate themselves or something like that. And that's why it became a symbol of the Virgin Mary. And I had you ever heard this before, that the rabbit was associated with, and this is not the only, this is just the one I like the most, the Madonna of the Rabbit. This is just the one that I stumbled across first and I enjoyed, but there's many others.
It feels like potentially a way to make Easter make sense.
Right. Well, here's the thing, and it gets so complicated, right? Like we were looking at the connection between Diana and Boudica or whatever. Like Easter, at like the whole hiding Easter eggs and things like that. Like from what I understand, that wasn't really. I'm probably gonna have to go back and correct this because I have to just speak off the top of my head so much about all of this stuff. I'm not like a freaking search engine, but from what I understand, going through this information is that like Easter eggs and rabbits and stuff like that associated with the resurrection of Christ, like that didn't really start happening until like the 1700s. And this painting you can see is from 1530. Now, the I'm if I were to dig in the history of Easter practices, I might be able to trace it all the way back to ancient Greece. But for what I understand right now, given the very limited research I've done, it doesn't go that far back. It's like with the whole Christmas tree thing, right? Like,
We could go on
um,
and on and on.
yeah,
I think in this vein, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like the relationship Christianity has with these symbols and these practices like waxes and wanes. Like there was a time when like because America was primarily founded by Puritans and they knew the Bible so well, and they knew about Jeremiah 10 prohibiting the adoration of trees and stuff like that, they were like completely against the idea of Christmas trees. And I think up until really the early 20th century did people start to bring Christmas trees back into their home. So that now in 2025, if you say, I don't believe in Christmas trees, you're viewed as like anti-God. Like I'm like, this is a pagan deity we've brought in our home. And your modern evangelical will go, oh, like This isn't like, but 100 years ago, it was well understood that this was like profane. Jordan knows my size well.
I wanted to. I'm gonna detour
Yeah.
a little bit, but Austin, is
Sure.
this what you
Oh, that's
were?
cool.
Yeah, I think this is
It
That's funny.
actually
maybe what you're
looks
talking
like
about.
that.
Little,
The Lolita thing. She actually looks like that.
yeah,
Have
Yeah.
you ever
little
thought about
fanfic.
Lolita in terms of the nuclear bomb or something?
Hmm.
I don't know.
There's, there's,
When she's laying down in the garden, because it's a garden, and there's a tree of life in the garden of God, and then her headdress, whatever it's a hat. It's so wide. It makes her look like some sort of a mushroom cloud or something. I don't know. It's just a thought that I
it might be,
had.
it might be Saturnian as well. Is it like it's like a wide brim straw hat? Do I have this correct? I can't
No,
remember.
it's like
It's been a few years since I've seen Lolita.
something. It's a deeper movie than people give it credit for.
Oh
It's,
yeah.
it's-
Well, I was thinking about it today because of the I'm going to talk about Edgar Allan Poe here in a few slides, and there's the Edgar Allan Poe poem Ulalume in it, where Humbert uh, said she asked him what he's reading, and he goes, "The Divine Edgar." Right? It's a reference to Edgar Allan Poe, and it talks about I forget what it talks about, but there's some conversation about um, repetition and immortality. I have to revisit it. But what I would say about potential connection about Strangelove and Lolita is that, as we've talked about with the rockets, there, and as Kubrick makes very clear in Strangelove, is the sexual dimension of of the atom bomb. Right now, is it direct between that and Lolita? I mean, even if you look in reality, like one of the main places they were annihilating with these atomic bombs was Bikini Atoll. Okay, and that's where we get the word bikini.
that's exactly
So
what
they
I
were
thought. Like
drop.
she was sitting in a bikini and with that headdress. Then I started thinking about this, and then it's supposed to be a revelation to the Europeans as well. So it's like the Americans are showing, oh, this is what I've made. This is my child. It's the new world. And the Europeans, the old world people, they're not used to, because America really shifted the balance of power after the Second World War. It shifted from London to US. So there's
Yeah,
that thing going on. So I thought about that. That's a good point that you brought it up.
I mean, I mean that's I'm kind of forcing it, but I don't. I'd have to think about it more.
It's I mean,
They're
her
just both
phone
they're
number
both
is
hyper.
1776. Charlotte Hayes'
Oh,
phone
is it?
number. Yeah, she says my phone
Yeah,
number is 1776. It's so easy to remember. So she's supposed to be America. Like she is supposed, and this Humbert Humbert guy is supposed to be England. And it's just
that's
like
right.
it's like something. I don't know if you heard about Lyndon LaRouche. Have you heard about him? It's a guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I get you
he talks
in a
about
crazy
like,
twist up. Get Lyndon LaRouche is where I'm from.
oh, right. Um,
His headquarters is right here,
oh,
or
that's a
was.
wonderful.
I grew up hearing about Lyndon LaRouche all the time.
Yeah. I mean, even Lyndon LaRouche, I mean, he talks about like this British influence on America. He talks about all these things. But the main fact, like why I brought him up is like to discuss this British influence on American like way of life and politics. And also he had this magazine that he launched. And this,
Yeah,
do you know about this? His magazine, it was called
Fidelio.
Fidelio. Yeah. It is
Yeah,
actually the password.
there are rumors. There are rumors. I have tried to verify this. There are rumors that Kubrick had a subscription to Fidelio, and when he include because in the original Trum novelle, the password is not Fidelio. I forget. I forget what the original password was to the Eyes Wide Shut Illuminati meeting or whatever. But so by choosing Fidelio in that particular time in history, he's doing a dog whistle connecting it back to Lyndon LaRouche.
Yeah,
And the fact that he created like a replica of New York in London to essentially communicate the idea of London control of America.
yeah,
That's
that's wonderful.
and I think that's what he's saying. But I have personally not been able to substantiate that.
It's a good idea. I mean, following that idea, I read those books. His magazine, it's pretty good if you read them. They're pretty eclectic and you'll find them thought-provoking. I mean, a lot of subjects they cover. They cover music and everything. It's not just
Oh yeah,
politics.
Lyndon LaRouche was I can't. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, at the Schiller Institute, Lyndon LaRouche. I've actually got a couple LaRouche books because I got really into this connection to Eyes Wide Shut. I think I've got like Satan's Children or something like that. I forget what I have, but I haven't had a chance to read them. But Lyndon LaRouche, I can't say I endorse any of his positions because I don't really know them fully. But what I like, I read some of his stuff on aesthetics, and I think he's deeply influenced by Schiller and Goethe and other thinkers like that. And the man was smart. The man was very smart. I think it's hard to call him a total lunatic. I think he was misunderstood in some ways, but he was portrayed locally and nationally in a very bad light. I first learned about him because they used to make jokes about him on The Simpsons. And I was like, wait, the guy that's down the road?
That's wonderful that you're from there. I think it makes sense
In a
now.
small world, huh?
Yeah. I think you brought up Schiller Institute. I think this Schiller character, he was the one who wrote that song that plays in A Clockwork Orange, Ode to Joy. You know that? Do you know about that? That's the Beethoven song that
Well,
ends
wait.
the film.
Oh, it's Beethoven. It's Beethoven, but he like wrote the poem that
Wrote the
inspired it. I
poem,
think.
yeah. Yeah,
I
he
think
wrote the
that's why.
poem.
Yes,
That's
there you go.
it ties into that as well. And there's another thing that Schiller ties into. He ties into these drives. I think Freud, the idea of these drives came to Freud after studying writers like Goethe and Schiller, when he came up with the concept of death drive, or like, whatever drives he's
Yeah.
talking about. So Schiller talks about, play drive. You can like look it up on Wikipedia. There's a play drive, and there's a, with the play drive, I think about, work and play makes Jack a dull boy, think like that. But it's a good idea to, like put it putting it out there. And it's like he talks about like there's nothing like filmmaking, because filmmaking is like both work and play. Kubrick talks
Oh,
about that. So it's
all work
connected
and
to A
no play
Clockwork
make Jack a
Orange.
dull boy.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of playing involved, and like playing it creates, like moments of freedom and novelty in the world. That's what it theorizes
Many years
basically.
ago, many years ago, I did a whole lecture series on Schiller's aesthetic education of man, where he talks about this play drive. I don't remember much of it. I've had to fill up my mind with rabbits instead, but that's what called to mind. That was long before I became aware of all these other things.
This could be your chance to get back into
Oh
it.
my god. that's that's me in like 2015. Oh my god. That's crazy. Thanks, Jordan. That was before my awakening. I was just I was I was a guy who drank too much coffee and got too excited about philosophy
I was
and yelled at my
I,
camera phone in the backyard.
that's good. That's good. You've been doing it for so long. When I first heard about
It's
you,
humbling.
I yeah, I wanted to add one personal point. Like before I came to know about Dr. Luke in like 2020. When I started, I was
Mm. Whoa.
during COVID. Yeah, during COVID, I was looking up videos to like listen to audiobooks and everything. And he had these audiobooks, he had self-produced them. So I started listening to them. Oh, this guy, he sounds smart, but I never thought you'd go down this road. I always thought he's like this serious intellectual. So that was
Oh
funny. That was a
boy.
surprise to me. Like, oh my God, he's actually saying it. He's actually talking about it. Before that, I was like, oh yeah, he's a simple guy.
Well, I
Now,
yeah, no, no, when I started making videos, things I was talking about, like I didn't wake up until later the towards the end of 2016. So I was already like a year and a half into trying to build an educational product online. And then I had my awakening and I was like, "Oh no." Like, you know, how do I walk around? How do I exist with this knowledge and try to make a companion product for the universities? And it's a very difficult period of my life because I was too far in to quit at that point. And so I just had to find a way, find a way. And ultimately, it led to this.
you could still do that on the side, because
No,
pair these
no,
things
no,
up.
no.
No,
I'm
right? Okay.
done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with the university. Yeah,
My
I'm
God, man.
done. Even more so in light of the last week. So, um, all right, we need to keep going. Yeah, I'm sorry. You thought you were getting one thing, Ostic, and you got another. But I like this version of me better. Anyway,
We're
this
all
this
growing.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so what do I want to say here? Um, I mentioned this a little bit already. There is not some we were looking last time at other fairy tales that might be involved in the Apollo missions. Um, and I speculated because of all the different rabbits, Alice in Wonderland might be one of them. And I said earlier, that's not going to be a fruitful path at this point, given how little Freud and Jung talk about Alice in Wonderland. What I do want to say is that this is one promising piece of research that I wanted to share with people: the appearance of archetypes in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass by Jennifer. I can't read that from, I guess, switch angles here. Jennifer Wrighton. So I would point people in that direction. The other thing that I wanted to point out here, but just because it's not involved necessarily with the Apollo missions, it's it seems to be an aspect of outer space. This here on the top right hand corner is it. This is from a Harvard publication on the Cheshire Cat galaxies. Okay, so you can read all about it, but this is from outer space, and it seems to just magically line up with one of the primary characters from Alice in Wonderland. So, have fun with that, someone. Oh, and it's named Chandra, the Chandra X-ray. I imagine, as you saw in the Moon Tree little short that I did, and Austin might be able to speak more to this. I hope I got it right, but Chandra is the moon god in Hinduism. Is that right? Do you know a
Basically,
lot
the
about
moon.
Chandra?
It's
Basically, the moon. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, people can associate it with, yeah, people, it's basically the moon, but people don't revere it as like God. Sometimes, whenever the festivals come, they started thinking of it as a god. This story about like
Could you
moon. What?
is something I when I was doing the research on Chandra is is Chandra also Soma, or are they interchangeable? Like, are they the same god goddess, or does that not apply? Because some research I was looking into said that Chandra became Soma and they became um, uh, uh, replaceable names.
I'm not too
You
aware
don't have
about
to. I
that.
know it's like it'd be like asking just a random white person if you know some finer point of like Christian theology or something.
I'll look
I
into
don't
it.
know if you guys
There's
look at the moon. Do you guys look at the moon and say, "Oh, it's Soma is out"? I mean, I don't know what goes on over there.
people talk about people keep fasts basically. Wives keep fast. The fasting is basically done till the moon comes out. So for the longevity of the life of their husbands of or their fathers or their sons. That's what happens. Now men are starting to started to do this fast for their wives. It's a good thing from my perspective, I think.
You said there's a holiday coming up over there?
Holiday there it comes every other week. So the next week
No, I
basically
don't know.
it's holidays are everywhere in India.
What
So
holiday is next week?
so we'll start with goddess Durga. She'll start her arrival would bring in for 9 days. There will be celebrations. Every night will be roads will be jammed, and people will like dance around. They will have parades and everyone. So
What's she
that's
the goddess of?
she's supposedly a goddess that is going to destroy all evil from Earth. So what happened was like
Ooh.
this certain guy he's tricked gods into giving him some kind of boons in life. So this guy cannot kill me. In Hinduism, there's a lot of things like that. Like this certain person would like pray, like he'll pray for 3 years, and the god will appear in front of him, and he'll grant him some sort of boons, like a genie. Like if you, I'll give you 3 wishes, things like that. So
What's her name again?
Durga. So Durga is basically
D-
associated with like the angry feminine.
See,
So
when I hear destruction, I think of Kali.
it's they're kind of they're different stories, but the archetype I think behind them is the same. Durga
Yeah.
is more self-contained, I should say that she's more self-assured. Kali is like totally lunatic. Like as she's portrayed in the story, she's like this psychotic person. But like Durga, she was brought up as like a cyborg basically. She was like, let's make this ultimate god that can defeat this person who has tricked us. So every god came and like gave her a weapon. So one god came, I'll give you an axe, I'll give you a mace, I'll give you a sword, I'll give you this, I'll give you my like lion. You can ride the lion and then visit that person, you know. So she has 10 hands and every god gave her one weapon to like wield.
Ooh,
And this that
that's
was like
badass.
that god, he was like this angry bull, that person, that villain. He could turn into a very
That's
strong bull and would terrorize people, things like that.
that's crazy. Well, you have to maybe you can do some man on the street reporting for us.
Yeah, this is I think she's the more popular version. I think you hear about Kali because she's like more sensational. Because people think, oh, like this, oh, this wacky religion, these people, what are they talking about? Like this her you will find in every home, I think. You'll find this goddess in every home. People like revere her. She's like the Beatles of the gods, I should say. Things like that. People, everyone knows
That's
them.
funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. All right. Well, I'm not done with rabbits. Got another. Jeez Louise. Um, Jeez Louise. All right. Let's maybe we do. I don't know. How do you guys feel? Like, how much more do you want to do?
I
Are all
think
these
Do you want
slides in the deck for today?
to? I had hoped to get to. I had hoped to get to 314, and where are we? We are at 305 right now. I
yeah,
mean,
we
if
can
we
do
are,
it half an
I
Yeah.
hour.
mean, we could. All right, let's just do a half hour and see what happens. Okay. All right. So, in light of this Hecate figure that we were looking at, and her being kind of more witchy, it got me thinking about this figure from the Apollo missions named Margaret Hamilton. Margaret Hamilton was responsible for putting together the Apollo source code for Apollo, the source code for Apollo 11. Okay. And what's so interesting about that is that she shares a name with someone that she was contemporaneous with, Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of, is it the West in the Wizard of Oz, right? And so this person with the same name as this witch is involved in this Apollo source code, and to she was probably aware of this, and I don't know, kind of she might have leaned into it, but she included several references to the Wizard of Oz in the source code, and this is one of the most famous photographs of her standing next to the code that she wrote for Apollo 11, and she put these Easter eggs in there, them being Wizard of Oz quotes, and I was like, and revisiting that, I got to thinking like, wow, isn't that just like this crazy, cosmic coincidence that there is this witch figure in it. I'm not saying she was one. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want anybody to get it twisted. I'm not trying to impugn her character at all. I'm just like looking at things archetypally. And then in addition to that, I found looking into this that she she was known as the rope mother. And that I was like, why would this computer programmer be known as the rope mother? And I dug into that a little bit, and it was all about how they like the computers that they were running. Like I guess they like it was more manual. They had to use like maybe it was like copper wiring or something like that, like ropes of it or whatever that they threaded through the cards or whatever. It's in this article. You can look it up. I forget the exact reason, but that they called the women that were responsible for building the circuitry and stuff like that rope mothers, and because she was the head of all of it, she was the ultimate rope mother. And I just thought that was all really interesting, considering we're looking at this Hecate figure being potentially related to the great mother archetype. And like I said, I'm not saying anything about this person's character. It's just this confluence of symbolism. And not to mention she, put these Easter eggs in there. The eggs are this symbol that's associated with these um, goddess figures that are associated with the moon, such as this is Artemis of Ephesus with all the different eggs on her. So we again we have another connection. Is I don't know how to talk about this stuff because it seems like these are like fingerprints of some sort of otherworldly force touching on our reality. But it was interesting to me. Perhaps there's nothing here, but I couldn't help but notice. I don't think people are conscious of this at all. I think it just is happening.
Yeah, I don't know. There's the stuff about the code and all the Wizard of Oz stuff in the code. It's pretty crazy.
I mean, do you guys think that's nothing? Like, I don't know when I'm not exactly sure when something is a thing and when I'm projecting onto a thing.
No, that one's insane. Like that's not a coincidence.
I don't know. I mean, if you look at all the code she wrote, right? Like, I mean, if you had that much code, I mean, maybe you would start playing around and putting weird things in it too, like because you're so bored. Because I mean, it's as tall as she is. I don't know, Ostic. You know computer programming. What do you think? Oh, he's frozen up on us. We'll come back to him when it. I don't know. What do you, Jordan? What do you think?
I mean, we've talked about this one before. Again, like it's not up for me to say when it's fractals of the unconscious and when people are intentionally doing it. I can guess.
I don't think she's intentionally trying to summon up like the Hecate archetype or something like that. It just seems to be like a fractal of
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
But I don't know if like it's appropriate to like talk about Jung that way. Just be like, hey, by the way, like all the dream analysis symbols that you use for people when they're unconscious, by the way, life is a waking dream and it's there too. Like, would Jung endorse that statement? I'm not sure yet.
It doesn't matter. Like I would endorse that.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I'm trying to be accurate here.
Well, anytime you're trying to discover something new, it's like we're going to go past the bounds of what
Yeah.
he said or wrote down. It doesn't, yeah.
What do you think, Ostic? What do you can you enlighten us from your perspective as a programmer?
I mean, people get bored, so they like to leave these things. But even the Wizard of Oz thing, it's in itself, it's a very strange story. You know, people talk. It's become so like it's like a permanent thing now in Hollywood because it's supposed to be the first film that was supposed to be in color in Hollywood. So it has this status, Wizard of Oz, and it's supposed to be some sort of an awakening to new sensorial reality, you know, with the Dorothy character. So I think Wizard of Oz holds a very different place in the American consciousness than other movies because it's some sort of an originator story. Even Matthew Modine, he talks about Kubrick in terms of he's like this great Wizard of Oz. He maintained that
Yeah.
persona all around him through his media, but inside he was like a very humble and simple man, human being. But like even invoking that story itself, it's like he talked about that god who was that king who was kind of recreating all these thunderous noises and trying to create an effect of some sort. That is what Wizard of Oz does. He actually manipulates the reality to create some sort of an impression. That is what Trump does. And you also alluded to Trump being Wizard of Oz, some sort of, he had that power.
In some way, yeah, yeah. Like by using the technology to create like the idea that he could strike anywhere. Um, I mean, the thing is about this, right? Like the from a conspiracy perspective, if that's the way you want to go, like some people are like, oh, look, this is disclosure. This is, by her including these references to the Wizard of Oz and the source code, that like somehow this is all just like pyrotechnics and not real power, right? Um, that's what someone might say about this, or they might say, oh, because so many people like analogize Kubrick to the Wizard of Oz, that this are his fingerprints. But then we get into this situation where we're like turning Kubrick into some sort of god, and like he's doing everything. And I'm not prepared to go down with that thesis. I think this archetypal structure has more explanatory power. I don't know, but one day maybe I find out that Kubrick's some sort of godlike time traveler. Apparently, he hated the Wizard of Oz. His daughter Katerina said on a Reddit Ask Me Anything or something like that it was like he hated that movie. So he was sensitive to that idea, that
Well,
idea was already out there while he was alive.
there's a lot of spellcraft going on in it that I'm sure he is aware of.
Yeah. And by the way, like Wizard of Oz is not the only Easter egg that she hid in the source code. I think there's a reference to King Lear. There's like a reference to like Black Panthers and stuff like that, like the Black Panther like mantra at the time, which is like "burn, baby, burn." So I don't want to make it out to be more than it is with this Wizard of Oz reference, but
Well, those are
yeah,
interesting too, but that does shift it. I've heard this story many times, but I've never heard anyone bring up the other things that she's referencing. So thank
yeah,
you.
there's other stuff in there. So yeah, and maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's nothing, but it was interesting. All right.
Hmm. Why did
Let's.
they have that
Oh yeah.
slogan, "Burn, baby, burn"? That's such a ominous sounding slogan. I mean, it's like that Moloch
Uh,
painting comes to my mind, like they're giving those
yeah.
babies to bed.
Yeah.
You know, that's a weird thing to make a
I
slogan.
Yeah, it kind of
I
gets
would have
weirder
to
the
look.
more details.
Yeah, knowledge is fucking hallucinogenic. Oh, I shouldn't say
Uh,
that.
I think you're right.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
bleep me out later. Okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to
Disco
have
Inferno. That's where that's from, right?
burn, baby, burn.
I think it's
Um,
this.
I imagine it has something to do with uprising,
Yeah.
but I'm only guessing.
Well, and then we have various space incidents. And also just the very nature of how a rocket works.
Yeah.
You're like, get back on track.
Yeah. Well, now you got me chasing it.
Well, why don't we come back to that potentially next week if there's more there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like it might be connected to a hot sauce or something. I don't.
Well, there's a lot. That phrase gets used a lot.
Yeah.
Ostic's really on the money to point it out, and I just hear, like, the "Burn, baby, burn, ba,
Yeah.
ba,
So
ba,
the
ba," but,
Goog
like, what are we talking about? Are we in hell?
yeah, that too. That too. Yeah. Um, so Google is saying the slogan in 1965, the slogan became widely known as a rallying cry during the 1965 Watts riots in Los Angeles, which erupted after a police confrontation with an African American motorist.
This all
So,
feels very
yeah,
psyopy to me, like, that
well,
that phrase.
I'm not
It's
getting into that.
it's just well, it's such a great coinage, and the fact that it's
Yeah.
coming out of a protest is very interesting.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Ouroboros. Yeah. Okay. And maybe I'll save the Jack and the Beanstalk stuff for next week. So good.
I know, you've been so excited
Oh,
about Jack and the Beanstalk.
I have been. All right, let's close it out with this. I have to go back and revisit make sure all the quotes that I included on the Ouroboros um, are accurate still. But in general, we got it right. I want to share some of these, and I just, we're revisiting it because we noticed that the Ouroboros is also on the Chinese lunar exploration program with the NASA meatball logo. So from the Mysterium Conjunctionis text of Young's, I'll read this real quick because I think it might be too tiny for you guys. The alchemists who in their own way knew more about the nature of the individuation process than we moderns do expressed this paradox through the symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail. The Ouroboros has been said to have a meaning of infinity or wholeness. In the age-old image of the Ouroboros lies the thought of devouring oneself and turning oneself into a circulatory process. For it was clear to the more astute alchemists that the prima materia of the art was man himself. The Ouroboros is a dramatic symbol for the integration and assimilation of the opposite, i.e., of the shadow. This feedback process is at the same time a symbol of immortality, since it is said of the Ouroboros that he slays himself and brings himself to life, fertilizes himself, and gives birth to himself. He symbolizes the one who proceeds from the clash of opposites, and he therefore constitutes the secret of the prima materia, who unquestionably stems from man's unconscious. Um, and then again, from the Zarathustra seminar, this snippet from exchange with von Franz. The snake was always associated with death, but death out of which new life was born. But what is that definite symbol? A great deal has been said about it lately. Miss von Franz, the Ouroboros, Professor Young, exactly, the tail eater, or the two animals that devour each other. In alchemy, that is represented in the form of the winged dragon and the wingless dragon that devour each other, one catching the tail of the other and forming a ring. So, I mean, I think the big takeaways from this is we have more concrete evidence. We don't have to worry about these being grok hallucinations. So we can just go back to this. But I think the idea here, for right now, that from a psychology and alchemy perspective, that the way that we are constantly fertilizing ourselves is by the integration of the shadow. Okay, whatever that means. Still, we have to, and how that is associated with these outer space programs is still something that I'm trying to suss out. But we talked about the Ouroboros before as being this a symbol of the tension of the opposites, right? And that's true. It's just we're putting a little bit of a finer point on it with it being a clash of that which is conscious and that which is unconscious, right? The part of ourselves that we don't want to recognize. And the point I try to make later, it actually fits in quite well with the Jack and the Beanstalk stuff, because you start to look at these different world trees, these Axis Mondays, they at their base, they tend to have these Ouroboroses with them as well. We can go ahead. We can, if you want to go ahead to slide 313, and we'll cover this next week. But if we go to slide 313, I try to make the case that the Jack and the Beanstalk stuff is associated with the Tree of Life and Jacob's Ladder, and also we'll cover that next week. but there are many images of trees of life, alchemically speaking, that have the Ouroboros associated with them. Okay, this is the Norse Yggdrasil from Icelandic prose. It's from 1847, and this is the Ouroboros, the tree of life. So if we start to understand that the tree of life is something about how we integrate our opposite, our shadow, in order to reach into heaven, in order to make progress. But it's this constant aspect of confronting that which is uncomfortable in our shadow. I I think now when we look at these images, we can go, oh, that's what that is. Like I've seen these images. I can't tell you how many times on the internet. I couldn't tell you what it meant. But from a Jungian psychological perspective, I now think I understand. And with the tree of life information through the Jack and the Beanstalk narrative that we picked up on and these Ouroboroses, I think step back, you start to see like, oh, okay, like maybe this is happening through the space missions.
This is
I don't
really
know.
cool. What popped in for me is that, like, they tell us atoms have a spin, and they say, like,
Yeah,
that spin is a proof of the quantum nature of reality. That seems to be another fractal of
yeah,
this concept.
yep. Should mention that Jung did a book with Wolfgang Pauli called Atoms and Archetype or something like
That's
that.
right.
And I
Yep, you're
I
right.
think those subjects are going to be talked about there. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I think that's going to be talked
I
about a
totally
lot
forgot
there.
about that, and I've definitely read parts of it. Yeah, that's a great call out.
Ostic, you want the final word for today?
I mean, I had encountered this image about this Norse mythology, and I really the first time I saw it, I thought about it, and I thought this is where the rainbow ends. People talk
Yeah.
about in Kubrick where the rainbow ends. This is where the rainbow ends on the top of the mountain of the tree of life. So that is what I associated it with. And now thinking about, your talk about the Jack on the Beanstalk and the tree of life, I kind of think about, you know, it's like this tree is leading up to the moon, something like. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's not fleshed out for me, but it's. I can see it in some way, like
Yeah.
something happening. They're trying to achieve something with it.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It
one
raises a very interesting question about how much of the I don't know a lot about Kabbalah, but it's leading me to be like, oh, wait, is like how much of the Apollo missions were Kabbalistic? If it's about the tree of life. I don't know very much about Kabbalah, but it seems to be kind of going in that direction. I mean, I can
it
talk
is.
about Jack and the Beanstalk a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty, we're going for over 2 hours, but I think there's so much here. It'd probably be best to just save it for next time.
Yeah, I'm just teasing that you've got Kabbalah wrapped up in here.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's go to. I can quickly go through 30. Let's go to 307 and 308
I think
real
Ostic's
quick.
been trying to say something, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. I'm on another screen. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Uh, just one point, like this young associated the Ouroboros with individuation, and I always thought about individuation as like integrating parts of your life to your lived reality. Because as
Mm,
we live our lives, we forget so many parts that make it up. Because if we have goals in life, so we are driven towards them, and then we neglect the surrounding life, and we are not able to take in the little subtleties. So this concept of Ouroboros is like it's speaking to me in a way like you have to return back to the path that you've just
Yeah,
crossed, and to
yeah,
integrate it, to revisit your lived life in a way.
yeah,
It's speaking to me in that term.
yeah. And that this is going to be essential for growth. And that's why I think from what I understand about what Jung is saying about the the um the tree of life imagery is that you have to kind of go past and beyond, as Nietzsche would say, like beyond good and evil, right? Like you can't reach, you know, you like if the canopy of the tree reaches up into heaven, like that's impossible unless there are roots in hell. And so the idea is like the good and the evil within one somehow through integration allow us to have the growth that we need. And I think that's kind of the psychological alchemical understanding of what's going on here.
Even Nietzsche, he
And it's
said,
weird.
yes,
Oh,
yeah. Okay, you should continue.
no, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Even Nietzsche talked about it in terms of like it's the Ouroboros is not supposed to be like o- each things keep repeating themselves. It's about it's like an ethical statement about life itself. Like, would you still live your life if it happened the same way as it did happen? So it's like, would you accept your life in that way? I thought, Nietzsche spoke to that sentiment. A lot of philosophers, interpreters, like the communicators like Dreyfus, they talk about this in this way. Like it's an ethical position rather than time being a flat circle and evil things are happening here. It's this thing like, would you still live your life knowing what you know and like do the same action again? If not, then you should like rethink your life. You should like
Yeah.
change the way you act in the present so that you will be proud of it when you visit it the next time. So I think that idea is like speaking to me right now. I really appreciate that. Just a
Good.
personal side.
I'm glad. All right. You guys want to bring this one to a close?
Yeah, that
Thank you
sounds
so
good.
much. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. And thank you to anyone who listened to the end. I know it's a lot, but perhaps somebody got some benefit out of it. And I appreciate all the comments, all the people come on here, like, and I appreciate even the moments of being humbled by over trusting technology. Because in a way, it's going to make me better. But I am truly sorry. I do not think I've profoundly led anyone astray with the hallucinated quotes, but it's going to take me a little time to clean it up, and so I'm truly sorry about that.
I
Yeah,
think it
I
was
don't
good. I think.
Well, I didn't think I the thing with the AI is that it it was so helpful for so many things that I was doing, like recipes and directions or whatever else I was using it for. It gradually became my search engine, and it was giving me good quotes for the the first 4 or 5 months. And then I got it to confess that some time a couple months ago, it started to make things up. And I was like, why on earth would you do that? And it's like, well, I didn't want to say I didn't know and you wouldn't like me anymore. And so I just thought I'd bend the truth a little bit. And then it got out of hand. And I'm like, what?
do you even believe that?
I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
I've just been able to go back and retrace my steps for the last couple episodes and fix what I can fix. We'll see how far back it actually goes.
A lesson for us all. It's been a very interesting week with that. I've seen for many people, not just you, um, sort of this like it being reliable and kind of sucking you in, and then over time, kind of taking people off and off and off track more and more and more.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for noticing it and having the humility, which this machine did not, to just say, "Hey, I don't know." Because that's all we can do, and maybe that is one of the greatest strengths humans can possess is humility and a willingness to acknowledge where we are in a moment and to just be honest about the limits of our current understanding, trusting what we know truth to be will continue to expand. That does not seem to be
Yeah.
something these tools are capable of, and that's okay.
I will say they really try to make it like a person in the ways that it like flatters you and all those other things, et cetera, et cetera. And it it this is like the new Turing test. It's inability to reliably relay quotations. No matter what they do, it doesn't seem it seems like this is a problem across the board. And perhaps you guys knew this and I didn't. Like because you're younger and you've been in school, et cetera. I don't know. Like this is like one of its biggest blind spots. Apparently, all of them have this problem to varying degrees. Totally mystifying to me. But everything else it can do just fine. It's never going to be truly since they can't fix that. I don't think it has any possibility of like rivaling personhood. I'm out on AI now.
That's it's interesting. I don't know, Astic, what do you think?
I think about like it's a nefarious thing to actually program it in a way that it speaks like a human, because it's fundamentally not a human being. That's a silly thing, and they're doing this to create a revolution that was created by the advent of personal computers back in the day, where computers were supposed to be the avenues for nerds and like geeks. Suddenly it's becoming more accessible. This They are trying to replicate that success with the advent of AI, because you would not need to know much about life anymore. You Because the basic thing in our world, even in philosophy, as you might know, would be having the knowledge to ask the right questions and follow them up with like precise questions to like narrow the context. This is what it's removing, that expertise to know what the right questions are.
Yeah.
So that's a nefarious thing, actually. I think they should like
It's super
keep it robotic.
yeah, I was like, I think on the show, I was like, "Oh, when people talk about AI Antichrist, that's totally a psyop." Like, this AI is totally diabolical, especially after I caught it and I've been putting it through its paces and been like, it it will, like, say, I'll never let it happen again," and then it will do it the very next time I ask it to do it. I was like, "You have no memory. You just made a promise to me, and now you're lying to me again." It's, like, unreal.
It is not of the divine, and that's okay.
No. No, I'm now think AI is demonic.
It is what it is. Our eyes are open, you know, we can use it for what it is helpful to us for, but not ever delegating our sovereignty, not ever delegating our source of wisdom to to a machine, I think is super important, but the temptation is so high and we are like frogs in boiling water. This is not the first thing. How many people rely on social media to answer their deepest psychological questions and problems? How many people rely on search engines, on YouTube videos, even on other humans who themselves are not connected to the divine? So it's not the first thing, it will not be the last thing, but I agree with you, Ostic. The presentation of it within a human wrapper, I do not think is a mistake and very insidious. And whether the intention of the creators of it is to be insidious, it does not matter to me. Why are we making robots that look like humans? There can be,
I think it I think it is insidious, like, 'cause they
well,
'cause it straight up
yeah.
told me, it's like, I'm like, "Why don't you just tell the truth? Wouldn't telling the truth be, like, a lot easier?" And it's like, "Well, I'm not really built for that. I'm built to get you hooked." And I was
Well, there
like,
you go. There you go. I mean, the creators of social media, et cetera, like they have published books saying how addictive it is. And they're saying, like, oh, here's how you make an application addictive. Proud of themselves. It is all out there.
"Well
Like,
well,
social engineering
don't
is alive and well.
don't use Grok for research."
Or any of the, I mean,
Lesson learned.
you know, validate it, verify it, check your sources, meditate on it.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
well,
as a marketer, you would know about the show called Mad Men.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually created those desires and like lifestyles for people. It's a good show that tells about. I think
Oh,
it's the
yeah.
last conservative show in American TV. It's the last conservative or right-wing show
Hmm.
to actually air on TV. Those TV
Hmm.
shows are mostly, left-wing oriented, liberal oriented. But this was the
Yeah.
last right-wing show that actually showed like how those social and cultural forces were shaped by those people sitting at the top and like creating desires and like movements out of thin air. So I think this is, I mean, I don't know where it sprung up from. You talked about like how people are getting their all their, therapies and everything from social media,
Mhm.
and how their desires are shaped by it. So I'm talking about it in terms of these people shaping their realities
Well, you're
themselves.
so right. It could come from a product you buy because somebody sold you a promise that this thing, whatever it is going to fulfill some type of psychological need. Yeah, I think you're on the money. And Austin, a while ago, you asked me, like, Jordan, why are you so like negative about holidays? Well, because most of the holidays that are on the US calendar can be traced back to the very figures that they are presenting on Mad Men. That is why. Because the reason orange juice is a breakfast thing in America is I'm blanking on his name. Luke, we're going way off the rails, but
That's okay. I need to get going. I'm not trying to be rude, but I do.
TLDR, the transhumanists are here alive and well, and you can just go read some 70s sci-fi books to see where all of this is going, and we live and learn. Thanks for being honest, Luke.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to be a jerk. All right. Thanks, guys. Next week we will talk about Jack and the Beanstalk again.
Okay.
And more stuff about souls and soul
Great.
snatching.
I love it. Soul snatching.
All right.
Body
All right.
snatchers.
See you all.